That's right, guys. A major operation that was kept under wraps for months was finally revealed today.
At 4:03 a.m., North Texas was holding its breath. Most homes were dark and the streets were still. Then the silence shattered. Rotor blades punched through the air. Armored engines pushed into tight suburban blocks, and breaching teams fanned out across 6 cities. In the same split second, flashbangs erupted and turned quiet neighborhoods into a synchronized federal battlefield. What happened that morning was not a routine gang sweep. It was the end of a 3-year hunt for a network linked to more than 180 shootings, murders, and drug operations across East Arlington since 2022. Agents were not chasing small-time dealers. They were hunting a structured enterprise that used ranks, coded messages, and social media videos to recruit teenagers and hide a fentanyl pipeline measured in tons. This wasn't a local crime problem. This was an industrial machine operating inside American neighborhoods with routes that moved deadly drugs far beyond Texas. If you believe law enforcement should keep this advantage, hit like and subscribe to Military Power before we go deeper. In the hours before the raids, Arlington, Dallas, and the surrounding suburbs looked completely ordinary. Streetlights blinked over empty intersections. Early commuters prepared for another weekday, and nothing suggested that federal teams were watching from unmarked vehicles. That calm was important because it showed how quietly the danger had grown. The community lived in routine silence, even while violence was building beneath it. The first signals that something was wrong appeared years earlier. Starting in 2022, police reports showed a sharp rise in late-night shootings, armed robberies, and intimidation across East Arlington. Most of the victims had no connection to each other, yet many incidents happened within the same few blocks. Patrol officers kept noticing the same spray-painted symbols, the same hand signs captured on cameras, and the same pattern of teenagers arriving and disappearing in seconds. Investigators realized that these were not random attacks. Someone was giving orders, and someone was enforcing them. One incident finally forced federal authorities to take a closer look. A retaliatory shooting tied to a dispute inside the 600 gang exposed the first layer of coordination. The attackers acted too quickly, moved with purpose, and vanished before officers arrived. Analysts compared the method with earlier cases and found that several juveniles involved in past assaults had been pressured to carry out violence to earn acceptance inside the network. That detail changed the understanding of the situation. It meant the group was no longer a loose street set. It was controlling young recruits through a defined system. A small apartment near East Arkansas Lane became the first real turning point. Neighbors saw unfamiliar cars arriving at night, staying only a few minutes, then leaving without headlights. When officers conducted a controlled approach, they discovered a quiet but active distribution point. Inside were several prepaid phones, lists of coded entries, and a stack of cash hidden under a floorboard. Nothing in the apartment was dramatic on its own, but every object pointed to a larger structure. The codes matched usernames seen on local gang-themed videos online. Several phones held references to deliveries connected to fentanyl. Investigators now had proof that the shootings were not simply acts of rivalry, they were part of a system that protected a drug pipeline. The most alarming discovery came from encrypted logs found on one of the phones. Federal analysts identified patterns pointing to planned retaliation hits, payment routes disguised as digital transfers, and preliminary instructions for moving drug shipments through North Texas without detection. These messages suggested coordination far beyond what a small neighborhood crew could manage. Something bigger was steering the operations. For the agents reviewing those logs, the picture became clear. A structured enterprise was taking shape in the shadows of East Arlington, using young recruits, coded communications, and hidden apartments to move drugs and enforce control. And every encrypted message hinted at a network ready to grow unless someone stopped it. If you were the analyst reading those encrypted logs, what would you think was coming next? For anyone studying those encrypted logs, it became obvious. What came next was not a single arrest or a simple neighborhood patrol. It was the beginning of a federal investigation designed to expose an organization that moved like a corporation and struck like a paramilitary group. The coded messages showed shipments, schedules, and retaliation plans, which meant the network was preparing to expand. That realization pushed federal agencies to open a long, quiet pursuit that would run almost completely out of public view. The investigation grew slowly, but deliberately. Over nearly 2 years, federal teams used surveillance tools, social media monitoring, and wiretaps to trace every layer of the operation. Analysts mapped out how the 600 gang structured itself, identifying senior members who handled strategy, mid-level lieutenants who managed territory, and younger recruits who were pressured into carrying out robberies and assaults. This hierarchy explained why the violence in East Arlington looked so coordinated. Each level had a job, and each part of the structure worked to protect the fentanyl pipeline running through the region. Social media gave investigators unexpected insight. The network used YouTube videos, Instagram stories, and short clips posted from anonymous accounts to project status and recruit new members. Teenagers saw expensive cars, cash displays, and choreographed displays of weapons, but federal analysts recognized the clips as coded communications. Certain hand signs, colors, and background locations were used to mark territory, while specific symbols revealed upcoming moves or warnings. These videos were not entertainment. They were propaganda paired with information transfer. The financial routes behind the group were equally organized. Instead of traditional cash drops, the network relied on prepaid debit cards, mobile payment apps, and small crypto transfers to obscure their profit stream. Money moved in small increments to avoid detection, but over time, the pattern formed a hidden highway of transactions. Each route corresponded to a phase of the drug distribution chain, and each phase supported the next shipment approaching Texas. Wiretaps revealed even more. Analysts intercepted messages describing planned retaliation attacks, confirmations of weapon pickups, and coded references to delivery checkpoints. Certain phrases such as 600, runs, and blessings were repeated across different devices, suggesting a shared communication manual inside the network. Investigators matched these messages to real-world activity, including shootings and robberies, and realized they had uncovered a coordinated enterprise that met the legal threshold for RICO charges. The deeper the investigation went, the more difficult infiltration became. The group changed phones frequently, used multiple accounts, and communicated through symbols that shifted every few weeks. Recruits were not allowed to meet senior members directly, and many tasks were delivered through brief instructions inside music videos or edited posts. For law enforcement, the challenge was clear. The gang used culture as camouflage, turning entertainment platforms into operational channels. Despite the obstacles, the picture of the organization slowly took shape. Investigators built charts showing the command structure, identified safehouses linked to distribution routes, and traced communication patterns back to a handful of organizers who operated with near-constant secrecy. The evidence showed a network that controlled large parts of East Arlington through fear, quick payouts, and intimidation. By the time federal analysts finished assembling the information, the group had been linked to more than 180 violent incidents since 2022. Investigators concluded that the 600 gang was not a street unit, but a full enterprise protected by digital tools, social media propaganda, and a disciplined internal system. Every detail pointed toward a single fact. If law enforcement wanted to dismantle the network, they would need a synchronized strike powerful enough to break every layer at once. Because the next phase would not be surveillance. The next phase would be a multi-city offensive. The conclusion of the investigation left no room for hesitation. If the 600 gang operated like a structured enterprise, then the only way to break it was to strike every layer at the same time. That is why the next phase moved from surveillance into action. Federal agencies planned a synchronized operation that targeted every safe house, every mid-level enforcer, and every point of control the network used across North Texas. The goal was simple: disrupt the entire structure before anyone could run, hide evidence, or warn the next cell. The operation involved 6 cities arranged across a tight geographic arc: Arlington, Dallas, Fort Worth, Mansfield, Grand Prairie, and Forney. Each location held key members of the network, and each one acted as a node in a larger chain. For weeks, tactical planners coordinated routes, personnel, breach teams, K-9 units, and armored vehicles, ensuring that every entry point would activate at the exact same moment. More than 200 officers from federal and local agencies were assigned to the strike, forming one of the largest gang-related takedowns in North Texas in recent years. Before dawn on November 6th, the deployment began. Unmarked convoys moved quietly into the suburbs, while air assets positioned themselves overhead. In Arlington, teams approached small homes near East Arkansas Lane, while in Dallas, officers lined up along narrow residential blocks. Fort Worth units prepared to breach a 2-story house believed to contain heavily armed members, and Mansfield teams approached a garage identified as a storage point for weapons. Every location was held in silence until the final signal. At the designated moment, the stillness shattered. Flashbangs erupted across multiple cities, creating a coordinated burst of light and sound that stunned targets before they could react. Battering rams struck doors in rapid succession, and tactical teams entered with precision, clearing rooms and securing hallways. Officers moved through homes like controlled waves, establishing control before a single suspect could reach a phone or weapon. In one Arlington residence, agents found several individuals attempting to flee through a back gate, yet they were intercepted by a K-9 unit waiting outside. In Dallas, a suspect tried to barricade himself in a small bedroom, but the entry team breached the door within seconds. In Fort Worth, officers encountered brief resistance from a group that attempted to escape through a side window, yet their path was blocked by a secondary perimeter. Each situation unfolded differently, but the result was the same: rapid containment before the network could scatter. As the raids progressed, evidence emerged from nearly every location. Officers recovered stolen firearms, including pistols linked to earlier shootings, along with extended magazines capable of holding significant ammunition. Several houses contained encrypted devices that analysts later traced to communication hubs inside the organization. Bags of marijuana, bundles of pills, and small quantities of suspected fentanyl were collected as part of the overall operation. Approximately $11,000 in cash was seized, confirming that the homes functioned not only as hideouts, but as revenue points within the trafficking chain. One location held a rifle modified beyond its legal configuration, signaling the network's willingness to move weapons as aggressively as it moved drugs. Another residence included multiple prepaid phones, each containing fragments of coded messages that matched data previously obtained from wiretaps. These discoveries reinforced the theory that the organization operated through a tiered system designed to limit exposure and protect senior members. Across the 6 cities, the coordinated sweep lasted less than 4 hours. By mid-morning, 21 suspects associated with the 600 gang had been taken into custody. Several were identified as key enforcers responsible for violence in East Arlington, while others had roles in distribution, recruitment, or financial handling. None of the arrests resulted in harm to civilians, and no bystanders were injured during the raids, a significant measure of success for the teams involved. With the final location secured, officers began transporting evidence for processing. The operation had struck every major node of the enterprise, disrupting its ability to function and removing key individuals who held authority over younger recruits. The synchronized timing prevented the group from coordinating a response, and the rapid containment ensured that weapons, devices, and digital records were seized before they could be destroyed. The offensive achieved what surveillance alone could not. It broke the operational backbone of the network and exposed the infrastructure that supported its fentanyl pipeline and violent enforcement system. If this level of coordination and precision impressed you, hit like to support the officers who carried it out. When the noise of the raids finally faded, North Texas entered a different kind of silence. Patrol cars remained parked along East Arlington's narrow streets, their lights reflecting off windows and mailboxes, while federal agents moved in controlled patterns from house to house. The sound of breaching rams had stopped, but the work was far from finished. The immediate threat had been contained, yet the true scale of the network had not been fully understood. What came next was the quieter, more painstaking phase of dismantling an organization that had operated like a hidden machine for years. Inside temporary command posts, tables were covered with the devices collected during the raids. Laptops, prepaid phones, SIM cards, pocket ledgers, and memory cards were stacked in labeled trays while cyber teams prepared to process them. Analysts began powering devices, cloning drives, and extracting fragments of data that could link the 600 gangs' activities across different cities. Every phone was treated as a potential blueprint, and every ledger was viewed as a possible map of the drug pipeline. As technicians dug deeper, a second layer of the organization emerged, one that had not been visible during the on-the-ground investigation. Many devices contained encrypted message chains referencing supply routes and digital payments spread across multiple platforms. Some communications pointed to shipments much larger than officers originally expected. Federal estimates indicated that the gang's fentanyl pipeline may have moved quantities approaching 2.2 tons over several years, suggesting a distribution scale that exceeded street-level activity. The group was not simply selling drugs, it was feeding a regional economy powered by synthetic opioids. Financial analysis revealed another part of the machinery. Prepaid cards were used as temporary containers for money, then emptied through mobile apps that transferred small amounts into shell accounts. These transfers were designed to avoid detection by traditional banking safeguards, and over time, they created a hidden stream of profits. The pattern revealed a disciplined structure where cash did not stay in one place long enough to attract attention. Analysts connected the payments to specific addresses hit during the raids, creating a financial map that paralleled the physical network uncovered earlier. Other evidence offered insight into how the group maintained control. A collection of recovered phones showed repeated use of coded vocabulary, consistent with the messages intercepted through wiretaps. Certain terms indicated approval for drug movements, while others marked retaliatory actions or discipline orders. These codes created a communication shield that allowed the organization to direct violence without exposing senior members directly. Each layer worked to protect the next, giving the gang the ability to operate in the shadows. The most revealing discovery came from the combination of digital data, seized weapons, and video content circulated online. Analysts overlaid the information and realized how closely the network blended its image with its operations. Music videos filmed in specific neighborhoods unknowingly marked distribution zones, while seemingly casual posts on social platforms were used to signal shifts in territory or warn rivals. The group had turned digital culture into operational infrastructure. With the evidence assembled, investigators could finally see the complete picture. The raids had struck the physical locations, but the material gathered afterward exposed the organization's architecture, its hierarchy, its financial routes, its propaganda channels, and its recruitment methods. The findings confirmed that the 600 gang was not an informal street crew, but a coordinated enterprise with the capacity to move drugs, direct violence, and manipulate young recruits across multiple cities. Even after 21 arrests, analysts recognized one final truth. Breaking the physical network was only the beginning. The deeper challenge was confronting the system that allowed it to grow. And that realization set the stage for the next phase. When the raids ended and the suspects were in custody, the public saw the most visible part of the operation. What they did not see was the deeper impact uncovered by the evidence. The files, phones, and financial traces showed that the network had grown far beyond what any patrol unit could observe from the street. The real threat was not only the violence itself, but the system that supported it. This was the stage where the consequences truly surfaced, and the scale of infiltration became impossible to ignore. With the immediate danger neutralized, law enforcement teams began a second wave of work designed to cleanse the remaining influence of the 600 gang. This internal purge focused on identifying safe houses that were not part of the original raids, tracking secondary distribution points, and locating individuals who tried to erase data or flee the region after the arrests. Several storage garages were searched again, revealing hidden compartments built to hold weapons and supplies. Small rental apartments near major intersections were flagged as temporary hubs where recruits had been instructed to gather before committing assaults. Clearing these locations removed the structures that kept the network alive, even without its leadership. Across East Arlington, the community experienced a mix of relief and emotional exhaustion. Many residents had spent years avoiding certain streets, adjusting their routines to stay away from buildings marked with gang symbols, and warning their children about blocks they should never cross. The fall of the network felt like the lifting of a long, heavy pressure. Some families stepped outside during the cleanup phase just to watch officers remove evidence from homes once associated with intimidation. The return of quiet was more than silence. It represented a shift in how safe the neighborhoods finally felt. Certain images from these days stayed with observers. An older man stood outside his home with a folded American flag he had not displayed in years, as if the symbol finally felt safe to bring back into the open. A mother stood near Arkansas Lane, a place where her son had once been caught in crossfire, watching as officers collected phones and ledgers that documented the gang's activities. These moments showed the emotional cost of organized violence and the sense of relief that followed its disruption. The government response focused on more than arrests. Officials emphasized rebuilding trust and preventing the network from re-emerging under a new name. Local leaders worked with federal agencies to establish a community restoration task force dedicated to supporting victims of gang intimidation, improving surveillance in high-risk corridors, and monitoring digital recruitment methods. Cyber units began tracking social media patterns to prevent future groups from using the same platforms for propaganda or covert communication. The broader threat became clear as investigators pieced together the final elements of the network. This was not simply a drug operation. It was a coordinated system built on organized violence, digital camouflage, and psychological control over young recruits. The danger came from its ability to blend into neighborhoods, hide inside online culture, and adapt faster than traditional street crews. Confronting this type of organization required a long-term strategy that extended far beyond a single morning of arrests. By the time the purge phase ended, the community had entered a period of stillness that felt unfamiliar. There were no victory celebrations, no loud displays of relief, and no sense that the job was completely finished. Instead, there was a quiet recognition of how deeply the network had influenced daily life and how important the next steps would be in restoring long-term stability. This was not the end of the story. It was the moment when the truth settled in and when the work of rebuilding finally began. The dismantling of the 600 gang left one question hanging over Texas. What happens after a network tied to shootings, fentanyl routes, and digital recruitment finally collapses? The morning raids ended the immediate threat, yet the larger challenge now moves into the hands of the communities and agencies that must rebuild trust. The cleanup revealed how deeply organized violence had shaped East Arlington, and it forced a broader conversation about how easily systems can be exploited when no one expects it. This was never only about one neighborhood or one city. The structure uncovered in North Texas could appear in any American community, where digital platforms allow gangs to recruit quickly, hide profits, and spread intimidation. Every region believes it is protected until a single investigation exposes how far a network has already grown. The lessons from this case show that institutions must remain alert and that enforcement efforts must evolve as fast as the criminal systems they confront. The core message is straightforward. Trust is fragile, criminal enterprises adapt, and safety requires constant attention from both the public and law enforcement. The decision to defend the system now belongs to everyone watching. If you stand for America's shield, hit like. If you want your voice in this fight, comment, shield, or silence. And if you want to follow what comes next, subscribe, because the next state will not fall this quietly.